Hello, my name is Chris and today I'm going to try and answer the question, does Champix actually work? Now, to answer that question I can only draw on my own personal experiences. I'm not a doctor or any kind of medical professional. I'm just an ex-smoker who used Champix as part of my own journey to being smoke free. The first time that I tried Champix, I only stayed smoke free for 2 months and then I smoked again for another 3 years. So if you'd asked me this question then, does Champix work? I'd have been like, oh hell no, it doesn't work. Don't bother, you're wasting your time. But I went back and 3 years later I tried again, and this time I was more successful. I've actually quit smoking now for well over a year. It's been like 15 months, something like that. My maths is not very good, I could tally it up for you. But let's say 15 months. So clearly I did something differently in the second attempt than the first attempt, because it's not just that Champix didn't work and then magically it did for no reason. I had to do things differently the second time around. And that should give you some indication as to my answer. Does Champix actually work? Yes, but it's not a magic pill. It's not that you just take it and everything's wonderful, which is what I my first attempt at using Champix, I went into it thinking, this is it, I just have to take this tablet and everything will be fine. I won't think about smoking, I'll be cured, amen, hallelujah. That didn't work. So the second time I had to approach Champix as what it was, which was a tool to help me, but I also had to bring in lots of other tools and change my mindset and sort of like arm myself with as much as I could to help me quit smoking. So I'll get into that in a moment. I'll share about my experiences, what I did wrong, what I did right, what I've learned, what I would do if I had to do it again. But before I do, let's go into what actually is Champix. Champix is, as it's known in the United Kingdom, is also known in the United States and I believe elsewhere as Chantix with the T instead of the P. Those are the brand names for a drug which I can never pronounce properly. I think it's Varenicline or Varenicline. And what that does is, well, it actually does two things. Okay, first of all, when we smoke a cigarette, the nicotine attaches itself to receptors in the brain and that triggers whatever kind of pleasurable feeling we get from cigarettes, even though we all know now that we don't get the pleasure from cigarettes, we get the pleasure from, the relief of the withdrawal which the cigarette created in the first place. So if I'm smoking a cigarette now, the next time I crave a cigarette, that's actually created by the one I'm smoking now, if that makes sense. But let's forget that for a second. When we take in nicotine into our bodies, it hits the receptors in our brain, it releases, it calms the withdrawals. So what Varenicline does is it actually blocks those receptors so that the nicotine can't get to it, whilst at the same time a part of the drug actually attaches itself to those receptors to trick us into thinking that we've got the nicotine. So we don't crave as bad, with the withdrawals aren't as severe, and in time they become longer and more drawn apart. Whilst at the same time, like I said, it blocks the nicotine, the actual nicotine, from hitting the receptors. So we don't get any pleasure from smoking. And trust me, as someone who's used Champix a lot, when you aren't getting any pleasure from a cigarette, it is the most horrible thing. They taste like crap, they make you cough, they're just horrible. And for me, that is what worked in many ways to help me quit smoking, is that the more I used Champix, the worse every cigarette got. it got to the point that my last cigarette was an experience so horrible that I'm going to have to warn you that if your stomach is easily turned, then you might want to fast forward about 2 minutes in this video, because I'm going to describe the experience to you, and it was disgusting. I was in my kitchen smoking my last cigarette, didn't even smoke it, I had like 3 drags, and every one was worse than the last. I would inhale the smoke, and then I was immediately doubled over, coughing so hard that my face flushed red, my eyes were streaming with tears. I was a wreck, and then I tried again. And I know this is backwards, but it's the addiction. I tried a second drag, and it was worse than the first. My stomach was starting to turn. I was just, oh my God, I was shaking. I had one more drag, and then I threw up, like all over the kitchen floor. Just, bleh, it all just came out. I'm sorry, I know that's disgusting. But that's what my last cigarette was like. It was that disgusting that after not even being able to take in 3 drags, because my body was going, what the hell are you doing? Don't give me this poison. The receptors weren't getting fired to tell my body that this was good. So my body was just like rejecting this stuff. So like, get out, get out. So I stubbed that 3rd drag out, and then I've never smoked a cigarette. From that day to this, I have never smoked another cigarette. And I have used that experience to help me whenever I've thought about another cigarette since. I've sort of trained my brain now my brain doesn't associate smoking with being calm or relaxing or peaceful. It associates smoking with me throwing up in my kitchen, doubled over with my face red, crying because it was such a horrible experience. And I actually used a visualization technique that I learned from a book by Paul McKenna called Quit Smoking Today Without Gaining Weight, that I'm going to review at some point, where you really sort of focus your mind on how horrible that cigarette is. Like, you link the image of smoking with the image of like the most disgusting thing you can think of and combine the two. So I used that and combined the actual experience of my last cigarette, and that has helped me to stay smoke free, which is harder than becoming smoke free in the first place. So in that respect, I think it's fair to say that Champix worked in that it did what it was supposed to do. I don't think it was supposed to make me throw up all over the kitchen floor, but it removed any kind of pleasure that I got from nicotine, and it also made the cravings not disappear, but become less intense and farther apart the more I stayed on them. So yes, it did work in that respect, but there was still a big part of it that was up to me, especially when it came to dealing with the side effects of Champix. And there are side effects, and none of them are good. The rarest side effects that I've seen listed, and that I've talked to people and that I've experienced some of them, are things like headaches, stomach pain, nightmares. Some people, even in the comments in my own videos, have reported that it makes them sleepy. Some people say that it makes them so they can't sleep. Those are side effects, but those are, I can't stress this enough, those are rare side effects. They are not common. You're very unlikely to get those side effects. A much more common one, actually I'll get to the more common one in a moment. Another side effect that I want to talk about or address, there were, a while ago, there was talk, I don't want to say rumours, but there was talk that Varenicline caused depression and suicidal thoughts. There was a report done into this that was published, and I had to write this down because I always forget it. It was published in the official journal of the Society for Research on Nicotine and Tobacco, which found no evidence linking Varenicline to depression or suicidal thoughts. And I can vouch for this. I have a long history of depression to the point of being suicidal. I've been up and down for most of my adult life. My doctors are well aware of this. I don't think they would have given me something that was likely to make me feel suicidal given my track record, but they were fine with it. And I can tell you from my own personal experience that it didn't make me feel suicidal. It didn't make me feel depressed. I've had a bout of depression since, but it was far enough removed from taking Champix that I don't relate the two. What I will say is that if you do take it and you do start feeling like that, stop immediately. Please, stop immediately. The most common side effects, I've read that it affects 1 in 5, and I was one of those 5, is the nausea. It makes your stomach and your whole body feel horrible. Not necessarily straight away. When you take Champix, you do a week of only taking 1 tablet, I think in the morning, and then you go 1 in the morning and 1 in the evening. When you get to that point where you're up in the dose and you're taking more of the stuff, the 1 in the morning especially, but also in the evening, the 1 in the morning especially just makes you feel terrible. At least it did with me. Just to the point of not being able to do anything else. The nausea was that strong that I couldn't carry on working or anything like that. I had to stop and take a break from it. Now, in my first attempt at using Champix, I tried everything. I tried taking the tablet before food, after food, during food. I tried drinking it with water, with milk, with special like energy drink, not necessarily sugary energy drinks, but special like juices and stuff. I tried to mix it in with different things to sort of alleviate the nausea. Nothing worked. And the second time around, knowing that nothing had worked, I just had to sort of brace myself for it. So I'd schedule like, okay, I'm going to eat, take my tablet, and then do nothing for half an hour, just so that I can let the nausea come, peak, and go. Because it always went. It was horrible, but it was worth sticking through it, because I reached the point where I was so miserable smoking that I was prepared to go through this bout of nausea for a small period of time. Again, I can't stress that enough. It's a small period of time, like 20 minutes, half an hour, then you start to feel better again. Yes, it's intense, but it dissipates, it goes away. And it is worth, for me it was certainly worth it, because I'd rather have that for a short period of time over a short period of time. You know what I mean, right? It was very brief and not very long. I'd rather have that than the misery of still smoking. So that begs the question, would I recommend Champix based on my own experiences? Truthfully, I would recommend it, but only as a last resort. If you are only thinking about quitting smoking now and you haven't tried anything else yet, I would encourage you to try something else first, whether it's patches, lozenges, anything else before Champix. Not necessarily vaping. Just personally, I don't agree that vaping is the same as quitting smoking. It's just smoking something else. I would encourage you to try something else before Champix, because it can be tough and it can make you feel like crap. There is no getting around that. I can't sugarcoat it. Champix does occasionally make you feel like crap. But if you have tried other things and nothing else has worked and you are desperate to quit smoking, I would say yes, use Champix, But don't make the mistake that I made of believing it's the magic cure-all pill and you'll take it and everything will be fine. Because the first time I tried, like I said, I only lasted 2 months, and then I smoked for another 3 years. And what I had to do differently this time was to change my mindset, was to change the way I looked at the world. I know I'm sort of going off onto a bit of a spiritual tangent here, but this was important to me. I've said in some of my other videos that for me, smoking is an act of self-harm. Again, I don't mean to offend anyone who's had serious self-harm issues, but think about it. It is taking poison purposely into your body, destroying your lungs, giving yourself heart disease, increasing your own risk of cancer. If that is not self-harm, then I don't know what is. Now, why? I have to ask myself this. Why do I hate myself so much that I will willingly bring all this poison and tar into my body and make myself feel like crap and basically kill myself earlier? That's what I'm doing every time I smoke. So I had to start changing my mindset. I had to, here comes a cliche, I had to develop an attitude of gratitude. Think about why I wanted to be alive, what I liked about the world, so that I didn't feel in a position where I wanted to smoke because I knew that smoking would ruin all this for me. Like today I went out for a bike ride this morning. It was freezing cold, but it was beautiful. And I couldn't have done that if I was still smoking because I just would not have had the energy. I had to change my mindset a lot about different aspects of smoking. I had to, again, like I shared loads about being at work and stuff, like I got into this mindset of, well, I'll do a bit of work and then I'll have a cigarette, and do a bit of work and then I'll have a cigarette. So when I took the cigarettes away, then I ended up bouncing off the walls. Champix, Chantix, Varenicline does a good job of removing the body's physical addiction to nicotine. But what I have found from my own personal journey is that the addiction to nicotine is not merely physical, it is quite mental and emotional as well. And I had to address that. That has been the big difference between my failed attempt and my successful attempt, is preparing myself for the mental cravings. Again, if I have to change my routine a little bit, even just for a short period of time, I do it. I stopped going outside. When my friends went outside for a cigarette, I'd stop going out with them. Stay inside and make some new friends who don't smoke. I still love my smoking friends, but just when they go for a cigarette, not for me. So I had to change my attitude. And the key thing is that I had to want it more than anything else. I had to want to stay smoke-free so desperately that if I had to strap cushions to this wall behind me and bounce off it when I was craving, if I had to go slightly mad for a short period of time, then I would rather do that than go back to smoking, which, like I said, I had trained my brain to associate smoking with filth, with throwing up, with coughing till I cry and my face turn red. So yes, along with changing my mindset, I also had to bring in other tools to work with the Champix to make sure that I wasn't just, physically free from cigarettes, I was mentally free. Like I say, I think Champix does a wonderful job in changing the way our body reacts to cigarettes so that we no longer get any pleasure from it and we no longer want to do it. But addiction to nicotine, and it is an addiction, can be quite cunning and quite powerful, and then we convince ourselves that it'd still be nice to have a cigarette somehow. So I had to bring in other tools. And like I say, one of them was changing my mindset so that I was so grateful for what I had being smoke free that I didn't want to ruin it by going back to coughing my lungs up and throwing up. For that I used like I say, the visualization technique from the Paul McKenna book Quit Smoking Today. I also used parts of the Alan Carr book Easy Way to Stop Smoking. Somebody just commented on one of my videos just as I was about to make this one and asked if I'd used those whilst using Champix, and the truth is yes, I did. Not the whole thing, but certain aspects of it. So I used the visualization technique from the Paul McKenna book. From the Alan Carr book, what I took from that the most, which I spoke about right at the start of this video, was the idea that smoking a cigarette doesn't give me any pleasure. What it does is smoking a cigarette sets me up for the next craving. So the next time, my next craving is caused by my last cigarette. So I used that to help me, like if I was thinking about having a cigarette, I'd think, well no, because then I will want another cigarette and then it'll be harder to break that habit. So I had to use that. I had to use, things like changing my diet, like quitting caffeine. I said in my last video last week about I had to drop caffeine because it would make me so intense and I couldn't always tell the difference between whether I was craving caffeine or craving nicotine. If I could give you any advice, it would be to try everything. If you are so desperate to quit smoking that you're going to try Champix, and trust me, you need to be desperate to try it because it's not a pleasurable experience. If you are so desperate, then give yourself the absolute best possible chance and do everything that you can. Don't just use Champix, but get books. Try having something in your hand to hold. Even go so far, I wish I had done this. In fact, if I wasn't self-employed and could take time off whenever I wanted, which I can't because I had clients at the time that needed, I had to finish work for them. If I was able to, I would have booked time off work and just concentrated on getting the evil nicotine out of me, resting on the couch when the nausea came up. If it was making me sleepy, that's fine, grab a blanket and sleep. Quitting smoking is the hardest thing that we will probably ever have to do. So make it as easy as possible for ourselves and give ourselves the best fighting chance possible. I hope this has helped. I feel like I've talked for a very long time today, but I hope in some way this has given you an insight into what it's like using Champix to quit smoking, whether it works and whether I would recommend it, which as I said I would. Yes, I would, but only as a last resort if you are desperate. And please don't think it's some magic pill that you'll take it and everything will be wonderful, because once your body stops reacting to the nicotine, your brain is still conditioned to wanting cigarettes at certain times and for certain reasons. So for me it was about changing my mindset, getting right down to the root cause of why I smoked in the first place and doing something about it. That's all I've got to say for today, but if you do have any questions on anything I've spoke about today, anything that you think I should elaborate on, please do drop me a comment below, get in touch, let me know. I'll address them in further videos. Please let me know how you're getting on with your quit journey. Like I've said every time, it makes me happy when I hear people are really trying hard. And if you have failed to quit, if you've started smoking again, your horse is outside waiting for you, go get back on it. I'm going to tell you again that you can do this, and I know that you can do it because I have done it. And I am nothing special, I'm just an average ex-smoker, and I'm just trying to pass on what I have learned, and hopefully it'll help you. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.